mic will be hot, and now it is hot, and so is this panel. So thank you for being here. This is the future of digital in sports. It's also the present. I'm Chris Paff, your moderator, joined by an all-star panel of 6, and we have 40 minutes, so we're going to blow through this really quickly. Yes, I am representing the Mets today, but I'm also neutral as well. But thank you to the Mets for providing Citi Field. First, just to table set a little bit, there was a report 2 years ago that top sports leagues and teams had created more than $2.1 billion in assets in 2021. That was the digital value of fans, and it looked at everything from the Premier League to NHL, and it's really massive because that's increased even more in the last 2 years, and we're looking at things like sports betting, which we will talk a little bit about, that will reach $22 billion, according to the Wall Street Journal, in 3 years, in 2026. But we're looking at a number of new technologies and some not so new that are really bringing greater return on investment, monetization, fan engagement, a lot of fun. And we're going to kick it off talking about something that deals with where we are, which is a stadium, which is augmented reality. James Gilio to my left, who is with MVP Interactive, and Bobby Basham, his dear colleague with the Cubs, I told you we were neutral today, are going to talk in just a second as I ask them, but also I'm here to promote this book that James has written called Beyond the Jumbotron. You can get a show special for $5. You can't get a hot dog in this stadium for $5, so go out to his stand afterward and he'll talk about fan activation. So talk about how AR is bringing fans into the game and what you're doing creatively, but also what the business model is and how you and Bobby are working together.
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to thank Chris for having us here. Honored to be a part of this conference here. So I'm a bit of an outlier, as Chris mentioned, in terms of how we develop our products, and we really focus in on creating immersive fan experiences through a wide range of emerging technologies, whether that's AR, VR, and now very much trending XR. Generally, what we've been seeing is less from an operational standpoint, where clubs are activating these AR experiences, but more from a marketing or fan experience, in where clubs are now drawing to technology to evangelize, whether it's their club, their fandom, or really using that as a call to action to get people excited for their upcoming season or whatever promotional sponsorship they may have involved. And so I think we're starting to see a nice trend where I mentioned this earlier, where this immersive technology maybe 5-10 years ago was considered a nice to have, where there's a nice neutral trend of becoming more of a must-have because of the demand of the fan.
And you built the Coca-Cola experience that's out here, right?
That's right. In 2016, when Pepsi was sort of rolling over their sponsorship and Coca-Cola was able to take over that, we helped Coca-Cola activate, I think it was about a 9,000 square foot upper deck space, where we created not only a tailgate experience that sold concessions, but we created an immersive virtual home run challenge game. I'm not allowed to say home run derby according to Major League Baseball. So we were able to develop embedded technology where we allowed fans to step up to the plate with a 3D model. This was on a large 3x3 video wall, enclosed in a kiosk, surrounded by a batting cage, so fans would step up with a connected bat, much like a wireless Wii remote, and then essentially hit home runs right there in a 3D model at Citi Field. So it was a great experience.
This is great. And Bobby, how are you using AR, and how do you work with James?
Yeah, so I'm a little different on this panel, where I actually work on the baseball, the team side, so my work's done with players. And I think now we're seeing the point where, like, some of these fan activation experiences, they're nice, but the technology is getting good enough where some of this is practical to use in, like, training players or helping players visualize things. So with James and MVP, we're sort of exploring, like, bespoke products to help our players.
And some of this is with holograms, right?
We're looking to. Also,
I am selling the future, by the way.
Yeah, holograms don't quite exist yet, but there are a lot of different, like, augmented reality solutions going beyond VR. Some of the new, like, visualization displays that, like, could be potentially helpful, and MVP is helping us sort of push the envelope there.
That's cool. And Steveland, so Steveland's with Monumental Sports in DC. How are you seeing, AR in both the stadium experience and also something that you can, use to follow the fan?
Sure. So for me, I'm working on the team side and also on the broadcast media side, specifically with augmented and VR. You're seeing that more in the game presentation. So a great example is what you may have seen with the Carolina Panthers, or you might see with in hockey with forced projection onto the ice. Bringing that experience to the fan is where we see augmented reality having its greatest impact. Less so much, I won't say less so on the broadcast side, because there is an experience on the broadcast side that's necessary. It's immersive for fans, and fans want to peel back that layer and have a whole new personalized experience. But certainly in the game presentation experience is where you see it working.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see that evolve, because of course we've read a lot about how 5G has really helped the in-stadium, in-arena experience. And also, I think, sort of married to that a little bit is, as I alluded to earlier, the sports betting, iGaming, call it what you will, experience, which has exploded in the U.S. in the last 5 years. And Jed Korenthal, who's with Phoenix, is really an expert in ultra-low latency streaming. Jed, talk about how your activations are really helping move that side of the house.
Sure. So betting traditionally is typically done based on data. You get tons of data into your FanDuel or DraftKings or whatever sportsbook app you have, and the odds change, and you bet based on that data. What we do at Phoenix is we've built a platform that enables content owners to stream content in real time. So I'll actually ask a question. By a show of hands, who has ever had an experience where you watched a game and then got a text or a tweet from someone about a play that you haven't yet seen? Oh, that was a great goal, or mostly everybody.
My favorite was "Darkness Has Settled Over the Land" when the Yankees won the World Series in 2009. You can tell I'm not a Yankee fan, but I was like, oh, okay. Yeah.
And that's a common occurrence, and that's known as latency or delay in the stream. And what we've been able to do is solve for that. So essentially what you're doing is watching the game as though you're at the field, at the stadium, at the court, at the same time. So with betting, the same thing applies. If you're making a bet and you're seeing the data, but then the video happens 30 seconds later, you're out of sync, and it's very difficult to have both at the same time. So what we try and do is work with the sports books and the data providers, companies like Sportradar and Genius Sports and IMG Arena, to provide a way for bettors to synchronize and bet on the data and the video. Makes a big difference when you can see a player's facial reaction, or if you're betting on a horse race, is the horse very active before he goes into the stable, or things of that nature. So betting, as Chris alluded to, is this year the betting industry will probably do about $130 billion in what's known as handle, total bets taken. And it's just a tremendous, almost 40 states in the union now have some form of legalized sports betting. So we try and work with them on bringing the video and the data together.
Yeah, and that does dovetail a little bit into the fantasy world, which, as talk about exploding, has really taken off, particularly as the platforms have expanded, and we are very lucky. Little in-panel applause to have Orlando Lewis from one of the great French unicorns, So Rare. So please give it up for Orlando. He came all the way from Manhattan, I believe, today. But so let's talk about fantasy and what you're doing specifically, Orlando, because I really feel that there's this kind of almost real-time merger between the real thing and the fantasy thing.
Thanks for your time, everyone.
How are we doing?
There we go.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Chris. Nice to see you all. So I as Chris alluded to, work for a company called So Rare. They are a 5-year-old company, originally founded in Paris, and have more recently expanded into the US with a presence here in New York. we originally started as the new generation of fantasy sports, started in the football, soccer space. So we have a huge portfolio of partners across the Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga, and a vast majority of the major global football leagues. A year or two ago, we added NBA and MLB to our portfolio of partners that we work with. The key USP in terms of how our game operates is that you have full digital ownership of your players, so that you can buy, sell, trade individual players, and then within that play fantasy sports and win rewards, physical rewards. We have through our partnerships, some amazing opportunities to, we did a fly with the team at AC Milan and an away game in the Champions League. If you entered in your fantasy team and you came top of that leaderboard. So we've got various mechanics that kind of bridge the physical and digital space, and we're excited to bring a new form of fantasy sports to global football, soccer, NBA, and MLB.
And that's a big deal. I mean, you're talking about massive brands that are buying into this, right? I mean, it's literally like a sub league, if you will.
Yeah, and we're exceptionally lucky to have all of our partners work with us on developing this new category, because ultimately fantasy sports has been around for a while, and we're trying to innovate within that, and certainly having the ability to own the players that you love and behold, in the same way that you could own your physical trading cards now, that you can own your
and you own them forever.
You do. So they are sort of minted on the blockchain. So it's blockchain technology underpins the way that you own these items themselves, and that's where you have true ownership versus traditional gaming models where you almost sort of rent the IP on an annual basis, or you buy in-app purchases. So this is a more revolutionary angle of how you actually have proper ownership over those digital items versus them just being rented for a short period.
Which is amazing, because you can see where the monetization schemes go with different clubs. But this is the sort of the Web3 side of digital sports, I think, is something that Kristen's done a lot of work in. And Kristen, where do you see that now, whether it's the NFT side of the business or a little bit of blockchain-enabled monetization schemes?
We don't use the word NFT anymore.
As I said, that word that shall not be mentioned, and that's not just because of the crypto winter and nightmare, but anyway, I would say Web3 experiences.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Kristen Bojan. I'm the founder of Turnkey Ticks. It's a technology company. We primarily focus in youth sports, and we can go across various verticals. We've built technology to enhance everybody that's participating in the ecosystem, from brands to event organizers, players, coaches, to make an ecosystem that integrates blockchain technology. But we work on scheduling, we have registration, we have ticketing, we have live streaming, we have e-commerce in-app, push-through notifications, chats, where we integrate with social media. So we're trying to create an ecosystem that really brings some of the cutting-edge technologies together so that people can really enjoy the experiences. We have loyalty, we have games. So, we're in a sort of an integral sort of we're in a sea change of what's happening with technology. I'm sure who here uses ChatGPT or AI in some way. I mean, it's incredible the way in which it's changing the way we're, looking and can utilize technology. We're trying to integrate that into our platform as well. So, a digital collectible, what you're talking about.
Right.
We can use AI to create your ticket, which is now, you can own that, and you can now trade that, for example. So AI can help you create your own event and create the description of your event and how it works. AI can utilize data and find correlations that you would not otherwise find. So if you're a brand, you can now figure out what your customer wants and likes and how to make that even better for your company. So please feel free to come by and talk to me about the technology that we have, but I'm really very fortunate to be working in this environment right now when we're going through such changes with technology.
Yeah, and this is an amazing period, as you said, because, of course, ticketing is such a huge part of that old money left on the table conversation. You might buy a ticket to the Washington Wizards, which Stephen has some knowledge of, as I did, back in whatever year that was, 2014. But I get the emails from them, because I bought through StubHub. So I think following the fan and following the experience through some of these legacy channels is a very interesting journey. And I want to come back to you, Stephen, on this because we're now in this year, 2023, we're direct to consumer, which is a major part of digital, cord cutting, et cetera, all these things. I mean, where do you see this going in terms of how the fan enjoys sports without spending $220 a month to Spectrum or some other
So this is actually
provider?
one of my favorite questions to ask because I get it asked often. Where do we see it going? And I'll say this. It will coexist. So there will be a broadcast linear experience, but certainly direct-to-consumer experience is on the rise. Particularly you see with cord cutting, but you also see with the younger demographic. So as the younger demographic becomes the majority demographic, that will continue to be on the rise. What we've done in Washington, D.C., with the Washington Capitals and Washington Wizards and the Mystics and so forth, we've provided, through our streaming apps, multiple unique fan experience with different camera angles and so forth. That's kind of where we're going in the industry. And I challenge anyone in here who are creatives of technology to kind of put us in position to acquire and learn and be part of new, immersive, personalized experience, which is what the fan is.
Well, I mean, you and Kristen, I think, are so close to where this needs to go, and the same with Orlando as well. I mean, one of the things that comes out of this year for me is this feeling that, and I felt this for many, many years, that digital/virtual experience may be the primary experience, and the actual at-game experience becomes somehow an alternative experience. Maybe it's more premium, but don't you kind of feel that we're there?
Well, I feel like we are there, but there are fans that still want that live in-person experience. There are fans that still want to be at live arenas. There are fans that still want to be in bars and still want to get together. But certainly the digital streaming experience is grown to where that is even more in depth than actually being there in person. What you can see through augmented reality, virtual reality, through different camera angles, behind-the-scenes access,
Right.
personal direct communication with players and coaches and so forth.
And I
get that at the live game
And I think one person on the panel can answer part of your questions, and that's Jed. So,
Well, I was just going to comment because I think you're 100% right from where we sit from a streaming standpoint. But there's this expression, the third screen.
Yeah.
And in our minds, there is no third screen. It's what's the screen that you're watching,
Sure.
whatever it is that you're watching. That's your screen. You may have other screens that you're using for fantasy or you're using for betting or whatnot, but they're all your first screen at the end of the day. And because of our technology, you can do it all at the same time, and you can do it all in real time. And that makes a big difference when you're watching and you're getting fantasy alerts and you haven't seen the plays yet, or you're getting all this kind of other notifications, or you're texting or you're communicating or interacting with friends or the content. You have to be in sync and you have to be in real time. And I think that's, to your point, Stephen, that's where things are starting to move.
but it's a multiplicity of sort of urgent events that have to happen because you have the betting component now. You have that social media component, or as you said, somebody who, if you're 40 seconds delayed because you're on a satellite provider like DirecTV, and, that's a long time in the sports world, even in
Most
baseball.
people don't know that YouTube NFL Sunday Ticket is about 40 to 50 seconds behind the field of play, easily. I mean, that's a long time.
Yeah.
But Chris, I will also add quickly, we can all be sitting in the same room watching one single broadcasting experience and totally different.
Yep.
You know,
Mhm.
one person might
At
be
different
watching
times.
linear. Yes, I might be watching digital. You can watch something manifest, so forth, betting, fantasy. There's so many different ways in which. So my point that I was making is it will coexist, but it's sort of like what your personal experience might be like.
Exactly. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, and from our perspective, being in sports and entertainment, we all sell experience, right? That's the tangible asset. And so I would hope for not only my self-serving interest as what we do at MVP, but as an entertainment and fan, consumer, that nothing beats the live experience. But it would be foolish to think that the second screen experience is not going to compete with that. And I think, by and large, I think properties are going to be challenged as the future and the technology improves that in-game experience is at par or exceeds that in-home experience. And I do think from a technology perspective, the Vision Pro or the Apple headset is really going to disrupt and change our sort of way of life in terms of being able to have a head-up display that creates the magic and the accessibility that others have not. It's just a personal opinion.
Well, I tend to agree with you. I mean, look, I'm old school in terms of VR and was watching games, in headset back in even Oculus Go days, just because. But I think that it's getting to a point where, as we talk about second screen or third screen, I think one of the most fascinating deals to me this year in terms of sports with regard to digital and fan engagement is our good friends at Kiswi. Did a direct-to-consumer deal with the Phoenix Suns. I mean, I just think that that's brilliant on one level. On the other hand, it's like, wow, what a disruption. I mean, but that's where it is. I mean, if a team that plays not far from here, the Brooklyn Nets, had a deal with Scenic and Ease Live where you're getting it all on one screen. You want to co-watch, you want to do whatever. Back to Stevens, thing. You can bump that to whatever big screen you want. I mean, this is the all-star panel, people here. This is like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They're going to get together, and next year there'll be new experiences coming out. We have to come up with better costumes, though. And Orlando, don't lose the accent. No. Yeah, but so let's go back to you, Orlando, because you've seen some serious growth in the last couple of years. Talk about what the next year or two look like from your perspective in terms of fantasy.
Yeah, I think for us, there's a few key obvious innovations and iterations of where we look at. You guys were talking about AR earlier. We recently revealed our cars in 3D and have an AR experience where you can showcase those digital items in an AR format. So that the evolution of the card and the card designs is important for us as sort of collectibles. In addition to that, we have an ongoing demand and need to ensure that it's mobile native, mobile friendly, and that we're able to innovate on the social side of things too, to ensure that it becomes a fun and engaging experience for everyone. And to your conversation around the second, third screen, again, it's critical for us. We get the feeds in from data and all of the live sports. We're so hung up on ensuring that when we ever have daily competitions, weekly competitions, that people are able to consume and see in real time the scores of their players, so that when goals are scored and the real time data is manifested itself directly and quickly onto the users' phones or devices. That is a heroic effort, but gets less heroic. But it's interesting because you talk about the real and the fantasy side of players. Bobby deals with real players and also in digital. I mean, Bobby, it's interesting because, of course, you were a player. He's one of the few ex-professionals who's here today. So I'm just saying he's on my panel. But seriously, Bobby, talk about how, because you've got players who have probably decent social media presences who are even in development, and now you're using digital to help them improve their performance.
I think today's player, they want their own brand separate
Right.
from the Cubs, and all the stuff you're talking about are avenues for those players to branch out, build their brand, build awareness, connect with their personal fans. Ian Happ sells coffee. Right?
Yeah.
Players are starting to have all these different avenues and media channels to go through, and we might be naive to ignore that, right? And how do we participate in a responsible way to help the player and provide a good environment for those? those guys, like it's with all these
But
companies.
couldn't that be like a multi-billion-dollar business? In the friendly confines of Wrigley Field, right?
Well, I mean, it's hard to separate the employer, player relationship, right?
Right.
So that's always going to be an interesting thing to navigate. And
What's that? NIL. There you go. Yep.
College players are becoming millionaires before they get to the pros.
And
That's a
and they
lot
should
less.
be. I mean, so my alma mater, Northwestern, Bobby's as well, from Kellogg, was the football players wanted to create a union. I say go for it. If their avatars might become super popular, whatever they could own, do a deal with Kristen and Orlando, and maybe Bobby gets a cut. But Jed, let's go to you for a second because you underlie a lot of different companies that are enabling this world, and I feel like it's really exploded during this pandemic and post-pandemic period. So last 4 years. So what's your view of the next 2 years?
Do I get money out of this?
Yeah. Well, you have to share it on the blockchain, baby. Yeah.
Well, one thing I think is gonna happen on the betting side is not only do you bet, with a sports book, but I can bet with you. So
Right.
it's like essentially peer-to-peer betting. So it's instead of saying, oh well, the Jets are gonna wait a second. I was gonna say the Jets are gonna score a touchdown, but they haven't in about a month, so I won't use that example.
Did you see that game Monday night?
Let's not talk about it. Anyway,
Right.
I could bet against you that, Aaron Judge is going to hit a home run on the next pitch. And you say, no, he's not. I'll bet you $2. And that type of interactive experience within the betting is going to drive, a tremendous amount of engagement.
It's interesting too because that's where the fandom. Now I want to talk about fandom a bit more. When digital fandom creeps into the content in a way, and even if the fan is kind of a celebrity, like how many people here watch the Mannings stream? Has anyone seen that? Okay, I think it's pretty brilliant. And then there's Hoopervision. Anyone watch that? NBA TV. Okay, I can tell this is not a basketball crowd, but I think Steve-O has. But do you see what I'm seeing, Steve-O, that this is just an extra layer of engagement that comes from fandom in general?
Absolutely, and it started in the print space. It started with blogging, right? It started where you had at live games, you had reporters who weren't only just writing the story, but also blogging at the same time. So now we've moved it. We've seen the innovation and advancement of it in the video form on the digital space with Manning Vision, or Manning's or Manning Fest, or what you may call it, Hooper Vision. You'll see more of that because then anyone can kind of do it, but not everyone can do it successfully. But anyone can do it. So you'll have many people trying. You see it on the local level. Go to regional sports areas, you see people doing that. That will continue to be more of because it goes back to what we were saying earlier. You want to have an immersive, unique fan experience, and everyone is looking for that. So we can all be watching a Monday Night Football game. We can all be watching Wizards, Caps, whatever. But we can view it differently from our own unique perspective or unique experience. And that's what some sort of you described as offering us. And I think it's really cool. It's really good.
So I want to go since you mentioned gaming, because we haven't talked that much about gaming or Twitch, which is its own universe. And Orlando has a huge pedigree in the game space. So Orlando, I mean, you were with EA and among others. Do you see that side still being a strong player? Is it expanding? Talk about that broader video game side of the business for sports.
Yeah, I think everything is connected. As you said, I worked for a long time at EA and more recently at Epic Games, so I kind of understand the streaming nature of everything. We're seeing that now in our space too, where we've got people who are bidding against each other to win a car, to win a player, and people are live streaming that, and we're seeing huge engagement of people getting excited by how much is my card going to get sold for? How can I trade with this person? And there's a huge social dynamic too, which is growing. So it's all connected, and I think it's only going to get bigger as the years go on.
Yeah, I mean, and that goes back to what I think we're all saying about the level of interactivity. I mean, Kristen, you also touch a different side of sports as well, because there's a lot of amateur sports and even varsity that you're involved in, right?
Yes, and we are also trying to make it very interactive, both again for fans, for parents, for for coaches, for brands, and we have that ecosystem because everybody's interacting with everybody in the immersive space, making games out of it, encouraging people to play a game that's they're watching and you actually are playing it, and then you're streaming it. Then you have AI showing you parts of the game where you can see Bobby before and immediately after. You can capture that in a video. You can push it out on social. So creating that whole ecosystem for, and in youth sports in particular, there's 75 million children. Many of them play sports. It's a huge market.
Yeah, and do you feel we're in early days there?
Oh, 100%. Because everybody wants to watch the professionals, and there's a lot of money, but they're forgetting that there's like 75 million kids that all want to play sports.
So I have a nephew who's 13 who's a pretty good soccer player, but now he's also a place kicker. And there was a great moment where my sister sent me him kicking off, and somebody yelled, "Put that in his reel." And I was like, that ain't no joke now. I mean, Gabe Wilson, the future place kicker. There you go. But shout out. But yeah, I think are we taking questions here? Are we taking questions? Yes? No? Do you have any questions? Think about them because I think we are taking a few. But we have a couple more minutes here. So do shout out to us. But I do think that varsity side is under-invested to some degree. And my last sort of question here is on that investment side. Do you see that we're in early days, and this is really for everyone in terms of digital investment in sports, or have we reached a peak, or are we in the middle of a plateau, or where are we in that cycle?
I mean, go right ahead. No, I was going to jump in. We have not reached the peak, no. And I can't. Are we early? Listen, digital kind of really hit its mark in 2007, right? So we're about a decade and a half in. So let me tell you, you do the time. Look at the timeline there. Like we're far from it peaking. I'll just end on this. Really, we look at. I really want us to focus on not simply, of course, our AR, VR, but AI as well, machine learning. In addition to direct-to-consumer and so forth. That's where the future is, in my opinion, and what I've seen from my vantage point. And I think there's plenty more ground to cover. The dance floor is still wide open.
Right on. Kristen, since you have the finance background on this panel, what do you think?
I'm seeing a lot of activity in the investor stages, particularly in youth sports, because it's so fractionalized and there's tremendous opportunity to create a system. So I anticipate significant growth in this area, or I wouldn't spend my life now building it.
Good answer. What do you think, James?
I think from our perspective, 10 years ago when we were selling our services and speaking of AR and VR, XR, nobody knew what the hell we were talking about. Now we're getting phone calls. So
Right.
I think that's a good trend that, again, we're not fully at the must-have. We're in between that nice-to-have and must-have, but I think the nomenclature, the idea of digital is transcending what it was in 2007, right?
So less of an adjunct, hey, we got a cool thing on the Cubs app, and more, how do we engage and monetize?
Exactly.
And how do we get Jed some extra gigs there streaming all of your stuff, right? I think we're at time. Are we taking questions? You have a question.
Hi, I'm Anton, CEO of Fans View. So we work with fans and athletes. I don't have a microphone.
Yep. Jed will share with you. Say thank you to Jed.
Our platform connects fans and athletes posting for interviews, like directly from the locker room. And we've been working with teams and leagues. And I think a lot of the conversations with OTT partners is like, how are you shipping the content directly to our broadcast engineers to overlay? And I don't know if, this is probably for Jed and Steve, is like, is there enough data right now around the Manning casts or the alternate casts on AWS for Prime where to show it's actually working? Because in my experience and the people I'm talking to that are like really passionate sports fans, sometimes they see it as a distraction to what they're trying to do.
That's a great question. And the gentleman from FanView, I think you all heard that. Stephen, you want to take that first?
It is working. I mean, and what you see with Manning's, for instance, right, that's working in the linear space. They've taken a digital experience and transitioned it to linear, and it's done well, and they brought it back, and then when you add ad revenue and so forth, that shows that it is working. So the short answer to that is yes. Ways in which it can work from one venue to the next, that's where the conversation has to happen. ESPN has a major platform to actually present that in a certain unique fashion. When you go from team to team or network to network, that's where you kind of have to do the work in effort to kind of make it forefront for the fans to then get the results or to see the numbers of whether or not it's advantageous.
And I think that also we have to sort of almost sort of stop thinking along the traditional lines of, what are our gross rating points and what are our ratings and, the sort of traditional way of looking at something and whether it's working from a number standpoint, because it's engagement, right? And that's what the Manningcast has been doing. They're getting ratings of, 1.8 million people or whatever it is. But would you rather have 1 million people that are completely engaged and interacting with the content, or 5 million that, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off? Like, we have to break down the barriers of what we've looked at in the past, because digital content is, somebody was saying, it cannot be an afterthought anymore. It has to be looked at as the same. And I think one of the things I think they should be doing and they're not doing is kind of, even like in commercials, they should be online, and they should be taking questions and having people from, the audience or the viewers talk to them and have more interaction. I mean, I'm a fan, and I get a lot from that because they tell you about the game in a way that nobody else does. Troy Aikman does not give you any insight. These guys give you insight. So I think being able to interact with them would be, to the next level.
Yeah, which I think is super cool. And as somebody who's watched Supervision, I don't consider it a distraction, but that's just me, because I think if you have Kevin Durant on, as he was, I think about a week ago with Quentin Richardson and I forget the other guy, Darrell, and it was a tight game and the Warriors won, and it was brilliant. I was like, wow, that's like almost fantasy level stuff that Orlando would deal with. But I see your point. I think we really are at time. So we had a great question. Thank you for that, gentlemen from FanView. We're going to be outside, but please give it up again for James Gilio. Yes, Bobby Basham, Orlando Lewis, Jed Korenthal, Kristen Bogdano, and last but not least, Stephen Wilson. I'm Chris Paff. Thank you very much. And you can buy James's book for $5. Go out there and do it. God damn it. Come on.